Greener Media's Mining Weekly is speaking to July and Glover, the CEO of Thungela Resources, which reported excellent results. July, can you give me some insight into the employee and community partnership plans? Why has Thungela established the employee and community partnership plans? And let us have some insight into it.
It starts off with our purpose statement when we say, we want to create value together for a shared future. A shared future implies by its very nature that there is something that you're sharing. You can't share the future unless you're sharing the value that you create as an entity, and therefore we've got a responsibility to do that. But also it's the moral question of how do we ensure that those most affected by our mining activities are benefit in a meaningful and authentic way from the mining activities that we carry out. And therefore, from that context, we decided that there were things that we generally could do in a way that employees and communities feel that not only do they share, but they share in the destiny of our business. And that's where this idea of these community partnership plans came from. It really just beginning to give that meaning of what we mean by a shared future.
What does this 5% fully funded interest in Thungela's coal operations amount to in monetary terms?
You can take your calculator, Martin, and work it out, but here's the point. We say that in the South African coal operations, if you recall, our corporate structure is we've got Thungela, which owns 100% of our South African coal operations. As things stand today, 100% of Thungela equates to 100% of our coal operations, including that 10% owned by the other people. So if you just take our market cap and you say 10% of that belongs to employees and communities, you will be able to say what its monetary value is. As of today, I think our market cap is roughly, 6 billion rand. So that should equate to about 60 million rand.
What constitutes the community? I've often found there's some controversy around that in mining groups where someone says, no, but I'm part of the community. Why have I not benefited? Have you worked that out quite well?
As well as we can, working with our partners in government, civil society, and quite frankly, our employees who understand these communities around our mines are. So yes, we have actually worked very hard at identifying who those communities are. These are the people in and around our mines. And again, we've worked with government, not just the regulator, but the local municipalities, to make sure that we, as best as we can, include everybody who is affected by our mining operations.
So you've done well with the S in the ESG. What contribution can you make, do you make, to the E for the environment?
The E is probably the one usually least spoken about. But let me talk about it. And probably I saw one of your questions was on water.
Yes,
you know it as well as I do that water is a big issue in the coal mining basin. We have got a flagship water treatment plant where we pump water not only from our own mines, clean that water to drinkable quality, and some of that water we reuse in our mines, but some of it we also supply to the town of Emalahleni. We think that's an important environmental contribution in terms of cleaning water that is polluted, but equally an important social contribution in terms of providing water in a country that is water-starved.
So that's the E and the S getting
together. Yeah, and just to carry on with that, I mean, we have comprehensive programs around what we do with returning land to its previous or sustainable use. In terms of how we close, we reshape, we reseed. We've done some really interesting projects, like, for instance, where we have restored water wetlands in different places. In fact, on one of our mines, Isibonelo, we did a project in terms of restoring a wetland and bringing back to that wetland rare species, which has been recognized and received wide acclaim as a world first.
That is fantastic. And when it comes to actually mining, digging, and pulling that coal out the ground, do you believe in mining cleanly and greenly?
That's an interesting question, because what does greenly, because these terms mean different things to different people. If you mean being a responsible miner in terms of ensuring efficient uses of resources, be that energy, water, making sure that we reduce the footprint of our activities, absolutely. But quite often when people say to me, do you mine greenly? I always ask, what do you actually mean? Because it means different things to different people.
When I ask, are you mining greenly? I mean, those machines under there, are you envisaging that they'll always be powered by diesel?
Martin, I need to take you down a coal mine, because I think that will change your question, because our automated and mechanized mining machines, continuous miners, are all electric. In fact, coal mining is quite an interesting mining activity, in the sense that there's very few diesel machines other than machines that we use to transport people back and forth from the mining areas. But the coal mining activities themselves are electric.
There are all sorts of activities on the go now that want to try and ensure that people mine in, at least at their end, in a better way. Or doesn't this apply to coal mining?
Look, it applies to any mining activity, but clearly coal mining is very different given its hazardous nature. Remember that coal mining fire risk is probably one of the biggest risks you've got. And therefore, as you think about different energy sources, you're always going to keep at the back of your mind whether this doesn't create a fire risk. And the regulations around introducing different technologies that provide a different risk profile to fire are very strict, not just in South Africa, even globally.
What steps are you taking to reduce your scope 1, 2, 3 emissions and the dateline for that?
I can talk to scope 1 and 2. Scope 3 is a bit of a more challenging one, because we've got lots of projects, be that powering offices, buildings, with solar, whether our change houses are powered with solar, improving the efficiency of our diesel consumption on our open pit mines, and so forth and so on. Those activities we're doing, that's all in scope 1, scope 2. Scope 3 is a little bit more challenging for us as Thungela in the short term. We sell our coal to one customer called Anglo American. I would like to have a conversation with my customer and say, reduce your scope 3, because all they're doing is on selling to thousands of other people. So at this point in time, to be quite honest, that's something that we need to apply our minds, how we can exert influence beyond our single customer. But I couldn't give you a number or an activity that we're doing today.
So you are a miner, you're not a marketer. You let other people do the marketing and the trading. You pass it on to them.
At the moment, yes. And it was part of our transition into a standalone group.
And do you think that carbon capture and storage is going to be meaningful and it's going to make coal be used for longer? Is it competitive? Can you do this?
There are two questions. There are two parts to your question, and the answer is found in the most recent intergovernmental partnership on climate change report that was issued a few days ago. Because in that report, they do say, after we have done all these things, okay, which include, by the way, getting rid of coal, they say there is one thing that we cannot escape to manage global warming. We need to invest in technologies that remove CO2 from the atmosphere. And these technologies include carbon capture, sequestration, and use. For us to meet our climate change objectives, Martin, we need CCUS. Fact. Not my conclusions, but the IPCC conclusions. Your question is whether this technology is competitive or not. None of these technologies, when they started, whether it is solar or wind, were competitive. They were driven by policy. And therefore, if policy seeks to be agnostic to technologies to drive climate change, there's no reason why in the long term CCUS can't be competitive.
From your point of view, you take the coal, you sell it, and it's traded, and if it's burnt by someone, they should be looking at carbon capture and storage, and you believe that they're going to have to come to some sort of competitive situation with that. It's just going to be essential.
Martin, the answer to this question is slightly more nuanced than what you put it as. I sometimes call it a winner-loser discussion, which says, I dig, so I do the winning, you bet it, so it's your problem. But actually, this is similar to this conversation if you read adequately on the Johnson & Johnson settlement on opioid. They could not argue to say, the reason why people misuse what we produce is not our problem. Society no longer accepts that. We've got to act in a joint fashion and act responsibly as the value chain rather than as discrete parts of the value chain. So I am just as invested in seeing CCUS work as the ultimate customer. And we're going to have to work together. And we have to work together because it's in our interest.
Do I hear you saying CCU and I'm saying CCS? Is there something that I don't know here?
So you're talking carbon capture sequestration.
I'm talking carbon capture and storage.
Yeah. The word sequestration and storage is one and the same thing.
Okay.
But actually, the innovation has moved beyond just that. To, can we use the CO2 once we've captured it? So it's that combination of the technologies, you capture it, you store it. But can you use it to the benefit of society? I think, just like we think about recycling materials, that's where innovation has to go, Martin.